like to call to order special meeting January 15th, 2019 City Council. We'd like to have the pledge of allegiance led by Councilwoman Davidson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Councilman Savage.
Here.
Councilman Lathrop.
Here.
Councilman Van Winkle. Councilman Trutzel.
Here.
Councilman McPherson.
Here.
Councilman Finn.
Here.
Councilwoman Davidson. Here. Councilwoman Peak. Here.
City manager is very ill, and I think she has the flu bug and is going around. We haven't had that. Actually, Mary. And so our thoughts and prayers will be Councilman Van Winkle had a car breakdown over in Kansas City, Kansas, and the car that his son bought. So, this evening, I thought I was using my coach voice. Personal appearances this evening. We're going to have Sid Douglas. Would you come up, please, first at this time? Or are you ready? Well, I was thinking of him.
Oh, do you need the laptop?
No, you're not.
No, you're good. Sid Douglas with Gilmore and Bell.
Sid Douglas with Gilmore and Bell, Bond and Economic Development Council to the City of Belton. The matter that's going to be discussed with respect to the personal appearance relates to the tax increment financing plan that was approved way back in 2009 for the area where Menards is currently located. That plan adopted or approved three different redevelopment areas. Area 1 is where the actual Menards store is located. Area 2 are the pad sites that are located in front of or around the store. And then this tract is the one that's across the street or catty corner from the store is located. There was a contract that was entered into in 2012 with Herman Associates, and there's a couple of representatives from there for the entity they'll be discussing this evening also. But when the original contract was put together, it had a very specific provision that it contemplated that what would be constructed on this site that Herman Associates owns would be a convenience store. There were some exhibits that were attached that included some other alternative uses for other retailers and then some very specific uses that would be prohibited to be developed on the site. The Herman Associates has been working on trying to develop the property. There was an amendment that was done just recently, but one prior that have extended the time for completion of the project. And at this point, I think that they've got a proposed tenant, but it doesn't fit within what is provided in the redevelopment contract. It is a non-sales tax generating entity that would propose to use that space. And so they will be here to present the status of the development and why they would request, but it's not consistent with the agreement. And if the council is okay, that we would need some kind of action to authorize an amendment or something. But at this point, unless you have questions, I'm going to yield to the representative for Herman and Associates to update the council on what's going on.
Yeah, and I'd like for you to save some time so that you can come back up in a little bit. So
That'd be
you
fine.
want to introduce our guests?
Spencer Thompson is here as counsel to the developer to make some comments.
Mayor, members of the council, Spencer Thompson with the Thompson Walker Law Firm on behalf of Herman Enterprises, LLC. So it's important for the council to understand the context of when this was put in place and what it actually provided. This redevelopment agreement with my client involves only Project Area 3. Does not involve the main TIF redevelopment area that was created in which the Menards sits, as Sid indicated. When this deal was done, the plan was transferred to Menards by the original developer, an entity called Southtown Associates. Southtown Associates never owned the ground in question for Project Area 3, but it was included within the boundaries of the redevelopment area. Separate ownership, Herman Enterprises, there was some commonality of ownership. The Herman family owned part of Southtown, but they own 100% of Herman Enterprises. What actually happened, and I kind of have to disagree with the characterization that Sid gives it. There's nowhere in this contract that says this has to be a retail use. It did at the time, as a conceptual component of the plan, indicate that it might be a convenience store, but interestingly, the prohibited uses themselves in the exhibit to the plan say you can't have a gas station. So the document itself is internally inconsistent. And the reason for that is that it was an afterthought. It wasn't, I can tell you I represented the parties at the time, and I don't even think I reviewed it, because the contract was basically presented as this is an aside to the more important project, which is the main project, which is the Menards, where all the pads and the retail are. And Councilman Lathrop, you were here, I believe Councilman Savage. The focus was not on Lot 3, which is a small couple of acres. If you look at the exhibit to the plan that lists the pre-approved users, most of them wouldn't even fit there. Their sizes are prohibitive to being developed on a 2-acre site. So this wasn't, they took the exhibit from the broader redevelopment agreement with Menards. They attached the same permitted pre-approved tenants, if you will, and put it on the exhibit to this contract for a 2-acre site, a 40-acre site versus a 2-acre site. It was an afterthought. All we're here today to do is say, look, the plan says, the contract says, it contemplated a convenience store. That was nothing but conceptual. It could have just as easily been a fast food restaurant. It could have just as easily been an inline multi-tenant retail strip. It could have been any number of things. What it was almost insignificant because it was such a small component of the broader projects. Today, as you know, retail is in a much different state than it was 10 years ago. You couldn't put, again, most of the users that are listed on the permitted users wouldn't even fit there. There are things like Bed Bath & Beyond or Hobby Lobby. Some of them are already open across the street within the confines of another TIF plan. So all we're here to do today is to say, look, we want to put an otherwise obviously lawful and appropriate business for this town, a dental office. Not that much different than the dental office, by the way, across the street within the neighboring project and neighboring TIF, which what's good for the goose, good for the gander. It's not producing much in the way of sales tax anyway, either, I mean. But it wasn't specific to the notion that it had to be a sales tax generating use. It was contemplated as potentially a C-store, but at the same time, in the very words of the exhibit that they subsequently attached, which really was just a duplicate of the exhibit for the main project, they say you can't have a gas station. Well, when was the last time you saw a convenience store that didn't have a gas station? So the plan that's actually contemplated calls for a lease arrangement. My client would continue to own the property, would build a build-to-suit building of approximately 3,500 square feet for Aspen Dental. That's Class A facility. And then there's plans for a second building that would be some other similar type use. It may be retail, might be inline, it might be your standard kind of strip inline retail if there's demand for that. Right now, there's not a demand for that. You have plenty of retailers that have already located across the street. You have a ton of retail ground within the main body of this TIF plan, the Menards portion, I'll call it, where all the pads are, that can accommodate retail. We're simply asking for our client to be able to move forward with a plan that's in place here with a user that's ready to go that we've already signed a lease with. And we signed a lease because we didn't anticipate this being an issue, number one. And we signed a lease because we had staff pre-approval for right in, right out on that location, which now I understand is also being questioned by the city. I can tell you right now, it's diametrically inconsistent to suggest you don't have a right-in, right-out, but you have to force retail on this site. No retail user is going to go onto this site if the only access is the access at the signalized intersection. If you have no right-in out or right-out access onto Y Highway, you're just not going to get retail uses. So we've got a plan or a contract essentially that's kind of an afterthought. It's inconsistent. It's 10 years old. The market has changed. Our clients have been investing and developing in this town for a couple of decades. They were instrumental in bringing Menards to this town. They were instrumental in creating the TDD that helped build Markey Parkway along with others, obviously. They donated ground for the right-of-way for those purposes. And now all they're asking is to be able to bring a business to this community in Aspen Dental and leave open other future development of the remaining portion of this that could potentially retail. A couple other points to make. The pilots, regardless, so whatever pilot capture would be available would still be 100% of the real estate taxes would be redirected. Not one single penny of the TIF money, pilots or eats, would go to my client. All that money goes to the city and to Menards. So my client has zero, and I'm not exaggerating, he has zero economic benefit from the TIF plan that's in place. Whether you put a C-store or you put the next, high-rise apartment, it doesn't matter what you build there. They get zero benefit. It doesn't come back to them. They don't get any reimbursement of any of their redevelopment project costs. They all go to the city and the developer next door that's the primary developer under the plan. So to be candid and not to be flippant about it, if you guys want to take Lot 3 out of the TIF plan and capture 100% of the tax generated on that site in the future, it absolutely has zero impact to my client. What does have an impact is to tell them, you have to put retail here. We're not going to allow you to bring a use in here that's not retail. And I can tell you right now, it doesn't say that anywhere in this contract. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think it's important you understand we would have multiple tenants. This isn't just a one building. There's enough ground there that we could put a second building, and we don't know who that would hold. It's going to be market driven, just like the current use is market driven. But there is no market for retail small users right now on that site. They're going elsewhere, or they're already here because of the success across the street and elsewhere. And frankly, without a right in, right out, you're not going to get them. So, and in fact, without the right in, right out, we may not get Aspen. We're talking to Aspen right now about whether they'll accept a right in only, which we think is a reasonable request. And we're hoping that they'll agree to that. But that's something else I'd like some council input on whether or not a right into this site on Y Highway, off of Y Highway, I should say, is something that would be acceptable. We have prior communications from city staff that say a right in and right out was acceptable. But here in the last several weeks, they've changed their view on that. I think you've got different planning staff, and they're taking a little bit different view. Where we are with that issue right now is that Aspen is very unhappy about not having a right in, right out, but they're considering a right in only as a compromise. At this point in time, when we stand before you, we don't have any indication from the city of whether they'll accept a right in only. So there's the two issues for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Savage?
Some clarification here. The sheet that was given me is very unclear, but I'm believing that 3 is on the, that's where I believe it is.
Yeah, it's kind of light colored.
I was trying
You
to
can
find it.
almost see it's different than the rest of the site plan because it's an afterthought.
Yeah, that doesn't impress me much, the afterthought, but I appreciate the presentation. Over here on these lots that's in front of Menards, it's on 163rd Street, each individual lot. What size are those? You said this one was 2 acres.
They vary, Councilman, but there's any number of sizes there sufficient to accommodate restaurants, fast food, sit down.
The indication, though, the reason I asked the question is that this is a junk piece of property. At least that's the way I took you describe it.
Say that again?
Simply because of where it's located. It's this little 2 acres, we can't do anything else.
I didn't say it
with
was junk.
And I'm trying to figure out how it compares to the little lots over here on the other part, which would be a part of the same subject, or I believe it is.
Firstly,
Why is 2 acres so insignificant in your
well,
presentment here?
you can't fit half of the users that are on your permitted tenant list on 2 acres. I mean, we can walk through them if you want. Half of them are bankrupt.
Do they fit over here on the other side? though?
Absolutely. Yeah, they
I'm trying
have,
to get a comparison on size.
it's 40 acres versus 2.
I'm seeing a lot of cut up there, so.
There's 20 some odd acres of pad sites out front of Menards
How
that can
big
be,
is- how
that
big
can
is the
be
biggest?
configured anywhere, I assume, from an acre up to,
Okay, so you can do the whole 20 if you wanted to, well, except for parking?
right.
I'm seeing it separated out as,
All they'd have to do is come in and submit site plan approvals and go through that process. If they had a user that large, they could accommodate them.
I understand that, and that's where I was driving to get an understanding of what your point was here. And then the right-in, right-out on 163rd Street. Boy, that's gonna be, regardless, another intersection there would be difficult for me, but,
It wouldn't be
Is
an
there any other-
intersection, it'd be a right in, right out. Big difference.
well, it pretty much still is. We're getting so busy there.
And,
And that's an opinion. Everyone has
right.
their own. Is
And
there
I
any
think, I
access?
think we can convince Aspen to accept a right-in only, which would have absolutely no impact. I could bring 50 different engineers in here to tell you that won't have any substantial impact on traffic.
Is there any, using one of the, intersections that's farther up the road, and farther up the road being into the grocery store? What's the name of that street? Given?
You
No.
want to answer this?
Councilman Savage, I'm sorry, but the council, it's the planning commission that decides right in, right out. The council has no purview over that, and so that is not on the agenda to discuss tonight.
Okay, well, the council can certainly have their opinions known as to whether that's something they would find acceptable.
It's a-
Definitely the focus
It's
tonight
a
is.
planning commission decision.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that, but I still felt like I was gathering information as what the options were, is where I felt I was going with that. But I thank you.
Any more? Anybody else?
We need some input, folks. You guys have been elected to do a job, just like we've been asked to come in and develop in your community. We need some input on these issues. It's not gonna be good enough if we just sit down and don't have input. I appreciate Councilman Savage asking questions. I appreciate that the right in, right out is a city planning commission issue. We fully intend to take that up with them. We fully intend to show them why a right in makes complete sense and would be safe and create no public health issues. But why we need some input from this council. We're standing here telling, we're not getting a single benefit under this TIF plan. Okay, not a single benefit. And my client has signed a lease that says they're gonna build a suit and lease it to Aspen. And we can't make any progress until we resolve this issue of whether or not this council will approve what they perceive to need to be an amendment to this plan to allow for that type of use. There's nothing in this contract that says you can't have that use. You've got it directly across the street within the boundaries of a different TIF plan. So the document itself is internally inconsistent, and Councilman Savage, you can sit and say all you want that you don't care how inconsistent it is. How can you, in the one paragraph of the agreement, say that it has to be a convenience store, and then on the prohibited uses say you can't have a gas station? All I'm asking you folks to do is look at the reality
Okay,
here.
so tell me again what I did wrong, because I'd like to hear that again. What did I do wrong?
I'm asking you guys to look at the document
What part of
itself.
it did I do wrong, though? You said I can't do something. Please repeat that.
Councilman Savage, you suggested that that you don't care what the agreement provisions that I feel are inconsistent, or you said something to that effect, and I'm saying it matters. The agreement matters. There's
Well, I guess
provisions
I
that
will
are
withdraw that
inconsistent.
because I don't recall that.
Okay.
I
Well, that's how I
recall saying
interpret
things
it.
to gather information but I will go ahead and make a statement. I think that the things we put in along these primary roadways needs to be generating sales tax for us. I think it absolutely needs to, and if this doesn't fit because of the lack of sales tax generation, then I wouldn't be comfortable going there.
Well, Councilman Savage, what basis legally do you have to prohibit an otherwise lawful use on property that's zoned for that use?
I'm not getting into a legal issue.
You don't have a basis.
We appreciate it, and you're repeating things now. So in conclusion, is there anything else you want to say in conclusion?
We need some feedback.
Okay, we'll have our discussion on our agenda. We're going to have it right now as soon as you're finished. Thank you. And Sid, would you come up now again, please?
Yes, sir. Happy to answer any questions. You've heard my explanation of the status of the contract. You've heard their request. If you want to stick to the terms of what's in the agreement, which basically means that you want some kind of retailer that has sales tax generators there, that I don't think there's any action that you need to take. We'll just work on enforcing the contract as it is. If you want to take a different direction and allow some other use that is a non-sales tax generator consistent with the Aspen Dental that he was referring to this evening, if you need a motion to direct staff and consultants to prepare the appropriate amendments to the contract to bring it back before the city council at a subsequent meeting.
I got a couple of questions real quick.
Yes, sir.
This TIF was originally in what year?
2009.
2009.
And then it was amended in 2012.
And that was another administration before my time as mayor. So my big thing is that sales tax, we alluded to the fact that they don't get anything. What's the percent that sales tax that we get? 50. We get 50%?
The eats are 50%. All the money that flows into the TIF, 75% of that goes to pay certified developer costs, and 25% comes to pay certified city costs.
Okay, and what do those dollars do for us?
The 25% that the city gets comes back to the city to reimburse the TDD for building Markey Parkway. And once the TDD is reimbursed all the cost for that, then the city will be reimbursed the cost of the Belton Nexus Trail.
It's not right now, Nexus Trail, or is it? Well, it's future then, isn't it?
The Nexus Trail has been built, the costs have been certified, but first we are paying back the TDD for the amounts that they paid to build Markey Parkway.
I don't know who's going to answer this question. That entertains a good question. Is what's the TDD get with if we don't do the sales tax? If we don't have a business that has a sales tax,
They wouldn't have the revenues to apply towards the transportation projects that they've been identified to construct.
and where's that money go to for the TDD?
The TDD uses that money to build additional projects within the redevelopment or the transportation development district.
So we're saying that without the percent that we get, we don't have the money for, what'd you say, Nexus? And for...
You're not getting anything right now.
Excuse me.
No, I'm
No, sit down. You're not in order here. Sit down. No, I don't do that. You're out of order. Sit down and be quiet or be gone.
No.
Sit down. Yes.
I have a right to
You're
tell you
done.
the facts, Mayor.
Sit down. You are out of order.
You're not getting it.
You're not getting it. You're done.
Explain the reality.
Explain outside. If you can't behave, you need to leave. Okay, the money again.
So currently, any eats that are generated within that TIF plan will come into the TIF, and 75% goes to pay developer certified costs.
Cards.
And yes, which Menards is who is the developer that has costs that have been certified. And then the city also has certified costs. That is for Markey Parkway and the Belton Nexus Trail. All of those costs have already been expended by both the developer and the city. And those costs have been certified, and now as revenues come into the TIF, they are dispersed to repay those certified costs.
Okay, is there something that we're missing here, Sid?
I don't think so. I mean, there's nothing on the site right now, so there's not generating any kind of TIF revenues at all.
From a legal standpoint, are we at any bypass here? We missed something?
I don't think so.
Okay, do you need another minute here? Are you in agreement with that? Yep. I'd entertain a motion, whatever way you want to go with this issue. How would a motion read? How would we do a motion?
I think if you want to have a motion, you would have a motion that would direct staff and consultants to prepare an amendment to the contract to allow the development that's been requested. If you like the status of what the situation is, you want the development to occur with a sales tax generator, I don't think any motion is required, that we just enforce the contract as it is.
Okay, and I don't care which way you vote, well, however you do, that's fine. But anybody that wants to entertain a motion at this time? What? You want to do a motion? Okay. Councilwoman?
I would make a motion that we just continue on with the current contract that we have.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. A motion to continue with the contract that we currently have for sales tax.
Is that well enough said, or?
Yes, it's a motion to continue under the current contract.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All right, discussion. Open up discussion. Councilman Finn.
How does putting a business like this in this spot, particularly outside the contract, benefit the city?
It's not in there.
I'm sorry,
We can wait on these gentlemen right here to wrap up their conversation quickly.
Oh, guys, take it out in the lobby, please. Thank you.
The contract exhibit says you can't do it yet.
Lobby, take it to the lobby, you can talk to him.
If you all pass this and refuse my
You know,
client,
you're
you know
really
it's
out of
going
order,
to end up
and I'm
in
gonna
court.
pound this one
I don't
time,
care if I'm out of
And then
order.
I'm thinking that it's
This
time
is
for you to-
ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
You are ridiculous to
Your
stay
staff
here
won't
and
even
run.
sit down and talk
You
with
have
us on a
been
professional
asked
manner about the fact that this
to
contract
leave
is
at this
incorrect.
time.
It is incorrect,
Thank
and
you.
you know
And
it's incorrect.
thank you for telling us how we do business. Appreciate you.
Mayor,
Go.
it's obvious.
Out the door.
Ask yourself if a convenience store and the gas station are two
You
different
know,
things.
honestly, we've done pretty well in this city without you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
We'll see you in court.
Your question, that's your option, yes.
All right, so how does putting a business that doesn't generate taxes in this position right here, how does that sales tax, yeah, how does that benefit the city?
Here's how it would. We would still get property taxes. It's in a TIF plan, and we would still get pilots. The TIF plan contemplated that there would be sales tax producing entities because that generates additional revenues to pay off the TIF faster.
Correct.
So whenever you have more revenues, we don't really want the TIF to go the maximum life. We'd like to get TIFs paid off as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
And the TIF plan contemplated that all of the businesses would generate EATs and pilots. And the EATs are the sales tax and the pilots are the property tax.
Okay.
Chief Person's going to make a comment.
Just a quick search, and I'm sure Patrick can look even more, but the difference between a convenience store and a gas station. A convenience store can deliver fuel as part of their business model. A gas station is solely in place to deliver gas, and I believe that the distinction in that contract is that they don't want strictly a gas station to be located there. It does not preclude a convenience store that would also deliver fuel as part of their business model.
Does he know that?
Good point.
Sorry.
Councilwoman Davidson.
Just because this was before my time, is anyone able to explain under what circumstances the TIF across the street was able to get the dental facility?
Carolyn, you want to allude to that?
So the TIF that is across the street is a very large TIF, and in the contract, and Sid is not here, but it's okay for a percentage, a small percentage within a TIF to be non-sales tax generating. But last time I checked, I do believe this is a 3-acre site, and that's much smaller than the TIF across the street.
Well, what's in the TIF language there, I think is the real question. What's the difference between that TIF and this TIF that they got to do that and these they didn't do it? Why could they do that over on the other side?
The TIF contract for the Christie development across the street specifically contemplates that there's a number of different retailers or commercial development that would occur. There's descriptions of a wide variety of size of stores, and there's also descriptions of sales tax generating and non-sales tax generating businesses that would be permitted to be located in the facility. In this situation, the contract says very specifically, it doesn't say developed as a commercial development. It doesn't say anything in particular about more general context of what can be developed. It says very specifically a convenience store. There is an exhibit that goes on to add a number of retailers that are permitted and could be approved. The developer has the ability to decide what they want to do with it, but it has to be consistent with the agreement. And so to the extent that they're not wanting to develop a convenience store, there's a list of a number of other retailers that can be located on that development. Again, if the city wants to do some other permitted purpose, you can do that consistent with what they want, but that's not what the agreement is set up and provides. And so if you want to proceed forward, we need to do some amendment to clarify it. But that's the distinction between this development of this site versus what goes on across the street.
In the plat, what's the diagrams show? What's the actual, pardon me? Site plan. The site plan, okay. On that parcel, just like this map here, they have it all marked out, don't they, on every kind of business?
That's the same document that Sid has.
It showed a convenience store.
Yeah, I think it just shows the convenience. It just shows one building of and it describes it very specifically as a 5,400 square foot convenience store.
So the site plan shows, and I'm a visual person, that's why I'm saying that I remember seeing a convenience store and retail is what I'm talking about. Again, I want to make a point clear. If you feel like you want a dental lab there, if you feel that that's what we need there, don't feel bad about saying no to this motion. You can say, vote any way you want. Don't feel intimidated. If maybe we need a dental lab. I haven't heard. What did they tell us today in TDD? How many people, employees?
25, what was it, $100,000 salary?
Salary? Like 20 people?
Yeah.
So it's whatever you all believe. Yeah, I don't know. But again, more discussion. Councilman Trutzel, then Councilman Lathrop.
Hey, the real issue is the TIF. My question would be is, I know it's an ideal spot from traffic surveys, but if they went someplace else that wasn't a TIF area, I don't think anybody here would probably object to it. It's in the problem is it's in the TIF area, and we're trying to get the TIF paid off, and we need the money to do it. So, be happy to have them someplace else and probably stamp it and go.
And Herman Enterprise does own the whole rest of that property, and none of that's TIF'd.
See, I would be happy to support it in that place. That's just my opinion.
Councilman Lathrop, you were next.
Well, I agree with they could move it back out of that TIF because we have the TIF, we have TDD, and we have pilot that needs to come out of that. And I don't think he would want to put up that money that's already been spent ahead of time to get out of it. And if it's already in the TIF, and the things that are not allowed has been going on for years. When we had Home Depot come in, I was sitting on a committee on that, and we had no gas stations, no car washes, and several other things that you could not put in there. And he had one lot that's still vacant in there. He had something he wanted to go in. It wasn't something that would bring in sales tax, and we didn't allow it.
Public Works Director, he alluded to something about right-ins and right-outs. Could you help me with that?
So the right-in, right-out is too close to the intersection. We call that area, it's typically 600, but I think our policy says 500. That there's a lot of conflict in that area because you've got traffic, a lot of traffic on Y, eventually a lot more than we see today, and Markey. And so when you're driving down the street, cars are putting on their brakes to go in a right-out, and sometimes, that interrupts the flow of traffic. As well as confuses some people because it's so close to Markey Road that some people think the right-in's there. The more concerning one is the right-out because it's a swerve issue. Say that somebody wants to come out and they want to turn left, and then they have to go over all those lanes to turn left. So that's why our access management does not recommend any entrances within the area of influence. And you can kind of see that. I mean, it's a little different, but at 58 and the interchange coming off of I-49, where if you're going to Peculiar, which we have a project to fix it, but you have to swerve over all those lanes of traffic to get over, and it just creates conflicts and accidents. And we're just trying to protect, our main traffic ways for years to come.
Okay. Question, Councilman Savage.
Yeah, I want that right-in, right-out, talk about that a little bit more.
We're not supposed to talk about that?
What are we talking about? What can we not talk about? What's going on?
It's just
Can we talk hypothetically? We got to talk about this specifically.
as long as you know that it's a planning council or planning commission decision.
Well,
I was trying to read your body language. Okay.
I don't have any. I'm too tired. I have no body language. So.
I understand.
That don't have to be said twice. To me, that road is going to be a problem child as it develops and finishes. I don't have to be told that. However, what I wanted to talk about might be inappropriate now. We can move it to another time. But what is the options of accessing that piece of property either through Markey that's a reasonable to see some version of a decent development in that corner, or through some other property that's not developed right in that very same area? What's the general plan there, and what's the options? And if we need to move it to another discussion, I'm way okay with that, but I think we need to be thinking about that also.
The proposed site plan, as well as the Markey Road plan
Sure.
for access, allows a right-in, right-out coming off of
That's
Y.
marked here.
And then you have the intersection that's going to be a signal. So their full access will be going, what is that direction?
Yeah, it's kind
Going
of
that way on
confusing right
Markey
there.
Road
I'm with
towards
you though.
Menards,
Yes.
and that's a full access with the signal. And then they have access in between that's a right-in, right-out. So if you're going down Y towards I-49, you're going to see that access and signal around the corner. So you can just make a right on Markey and get in either one of those ways.
And then flip out. They can have a wide enough, or potentially they can have a wide enough approach to easily get something in there and out.
Yeah.
In a way to manipulate back to the highway.
Right.
It sounds like so. It makes a lot of sense. I just kind of want to be thinking about that. I don't want to really be bottlenecking, and if we need to work on that ahead of schedule, that'd be fine.
I
But it
know
sounds like
that
we got a plan.
previous conversations, staff seemed interested in the right-in, right-out, but staff doesn't have the authority to make that final decision.
On 163rd or on Y?
On Y.
Yeah.
So.
Could I argue that point?
Yeah, but it didn't ever meet our access management, so just to let you know that history.
Thank you.
Question, Councilwoman.
Not really a question, more like a statement, I guess. I just think when we're amending some of these contracts, it can kind of turn into a slippery slope. I know we've amended several recently just to give developers more time to fill those spots, but what I feel is different in this situation is the content of what's being put there versus, of course, we want to give developers more time to get those places filled because we need, people in there. But I think in terms of what you're able to put in there, you're kind of stuck with what's in your contract, is my opinion.
Other comments? Councilman Lathrop?
Just one other comment on the right in, right out.
Come on, fellas.
Let's do it.
Or left in, left out, whatever you want to call it. If he owns property on back there, couldn't he get way back up the way, away from this intersection and then have a right in, right out, and he build an own road up through there?
Right.
There's a drainage way and a culvert.
Big culvert.
They'd have to extend the culvert and, go over the.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility if he wants to do that route.
Appreciate
It would have
The
to
thing
have
that goes
bridge.
over the
They
water.
talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none. You want to reread the motion?
And you can correct me if I'm now misremembering after the discussion, but it was a motion to continue under the current contract.
Okay.
And
I have
I
one
did second
question.
that.
Need both readings tonight?
Uh,
This is just a motion.
Oh, just a motion,
This
okay.
isn't an ordinance, this isn't a resolution, this is simply a motion, so it's just a one voice vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Ordinances. A motion approving both reading bill number 2019-02, an ordinance calling for an election in the city of Belton, Missouri. Okay. Are we going to read anything here?
That is the motion.
Read it.
Okay, but you don't want to read any of those goodies there?
That's what you need, right there.
Thanks.
That's what you needed.
It was too simple.
That's kind of wonderful.
Pretty simple. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes.
Move for a second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-02.
An ordinance calling for an election of the city of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Councilwoman Davidson.
Is this where I can talk about language?
Yes.
All right,
Good timing.
thanks.
Good call. I'll be cleaner next time I talk. Okay.
I would make a suggestion to slightly rearrange how the propositions are worded, to the effect of, shall the city of Belton, Missouri issue its general obligation bonds in the amount of $13,750,000 to construct, that being in front, so construct, reconstruct, extend, and improve the streets and roads of the city and to acquire any rights of way. And then kind of applying that same language to Proposition S, shall the city of Belton, Missouri issue its general obligation bonds in the amount of $14,250 to construct, reconstruct, extend, and improve the city's storm sewer system and to acquire any rights of way. Just personally, I prefer having the construct and reconstruct there at the front of the question, because I think most people will kind of associate that with, improving the roads and being the biggest part of what we're trying to do. So I don't know, to me, it just seemed like clearer language for voters.
Who's going to tackle that? How would that sound? Somebody going to tackle that one? What would that sound like, what she just said? I was talking to either you or the...
Me?
Yes.
Okay, I actually, Councilwoman Davidson brought it up earlier today, and I actually, after reading both languages, think that I like her suggested change. I think the public will better be able, they won't get confused when, and stumble over acquire any rights of way first, instead acquire any rights of way is at the very end.
Councilman Trussell, you were gonna say something?
I would agree too, because, to me, it is, some of that would be reconstruction, and I think, that'd make it a little clearer to me too as well. So I'm in favor.
Keep it simple.
Do you, has Sid have anything you wanna say about it, or is there?
No, based on those comments, we did prepare a Plan B. So
Okay.
we have a substitute bill that has that wording consistent with what the suggestion was.
Is that
So
a
it
B or an
focuses,
R? So which one is it you want me?
both. So proposition The ballot language would read as Councilwoman Davidson stated, and I can read the question if.
That's what I'm after. Wow.
So Proposition R would read, shall the city of Belton, Missouri issue its general obligation bonds in the amount of $13,750,000 to construct, reconstruct, extend, and improve the streets and roads of the city and to acquire any rights of way. And Proposition S would read, shall the city of Belton, Missouri issue its general obligation bonds in the amount of $14,250,000 to construct, reconstruct, extend, and improve the city's storm sewer system and to acquire any rights of way.
Okay. So that's the way it sounds, so that would have to call for an amendment? You have a,
Let's do this.
You have a primary motion. So, Councilmember Davidson, I would suggest making a motion to amend the ordinance to reflect the language just read by Sheila.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to amend the language. What he said, yeah.
do we have to read that again?
Well, no, we just need a motion, so that needs to be approved, and then you need to do the voice vote after that motion is approved.
So we got a second?
Roll call after.
Yeah, roll call.
Councilman Trussell with a second?
Okay.
Any discussion anymore?
I
Go
have
ahead.
one more.
Right in, right out.
Maybe another
Can I-
addition to S. Says if voters approve this question, the debt service levy will not increase. I think we should put or decrease, because basically that's being eliminated. We are adding more time on it.
Sid, you want to allude to that one?
That is not in the ballot language, though. This is just,
It's over here.
Sid, go ahead and jump in, please.
the question, because of the way these are being authorized, they are general obligation bonds, and it imposes upon the city the obligation to impose whatever property taxes are necessary to pay the debt service. In reality, there can be an expectation that the taxes won't go up, but we can't include that in the ballot language because that's misleading to the voters, because if something would happen and you have to increase the property tax levy to pay the debt service, that you would be obligated to do that, and a bondholder could come in and legally force you to do that. That kind of information is best left for discussions and presentations, and any information that you provide that discusses the factual information about what is planned to be done, the bonds, and what will be done with the taxes, or what the expectation is. But as far as in the actual ballot question itself, there's not any authorization or ability to do that.
I understand that.
Okay.
Makes sense, but it's just that, these bonds are expiring, and then they would be off unless we extend them. So.
That's correct.
It's not a tax increase, but they're not going down like they normally would if we didn't increase it. Okay, that's
I mean, you can
Thank you.
state in your campaign information that the taxes are expected to remain the same.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, other questions on that motion? Councilman
Not
Savage?
on that. We can go ahead and go with that piece of motion, and then I've got some
Okay.
discussion.
Any other on the motion to amend? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Okay, now,
You can still have discussion, but the motion on the table now is the final reading of the amended ordinance. So we can still have discussion, but just know that the primary motion has now changed due to the secondary motion just approved.
As amended, okay. So, question.
He kind of lost me on that.
Hey, we're just kind of going in the dark right now.
All right, I'll go in the dark, no problem. I do feel like that this was at least presented to us a few weeks ago, that it was gonna be a no tax increase, which I understand, it's a no tax increase based on the fact of what? Because that was never described to me as to what that was, or I don't feel it was.
If voters do not approve the storm sewer system, the debt levy would decrease. The reason that it's a no tax increase is because debt will be falling off, and it will, and so the levy that is currently in place will be able to be used to pay the principal and interest on the storm water bonds.
So, with the information that's going to be provided, is that gonna be provided out there, or what are we gonna do for promotion on this? And if so, is that gonna be information that's put out to the voters? What's the intent here?
We're going to do an education campaign. That's all that we can do, and we need to educate voters. If you want that it explicitly stated like that in the campaign materials, that can absolutely be done.
I just think complete, I guess I'm gonna use the word honesty, is so important. I think if you go about it straightforward, folks understand, they know exactly what they're doing, and I think they appreciate it. I know I do.
Sure.
No agendas besides the facts. So I'm okay with that one. Do we have any more information since we've chatted about what's wrong with the streets? What are we gonna do to fix them? Which streets are we gonna do? We're gonna try to spread this thing around. What's the information factor there?
We've authorized a contract with Stantec, and that's where we're going to, I know I explained it last time, so I don't want to go over unless you have questions, but that's where we're going to determine exactly what each street is composed of. Is it 2 inches of asphalt? Is it 8 inches of asphalt, etc.? And then we're going to have a priority list. So we're going to know exactly what's out there. And in fact, Stantec is going to be on site tomorrow to begin work. They were going to come next week, but they know the weather's bad. They don't know that they're going to get it all in this week, but they wanted to go ahead and start doing work. So if you see them out there, that's what's going on. Meanwhile, I'm working with our geotechnical contractor to go authorize them. Hopefully we can get it on the January 22nd meeting to take some borings of our streets, because Stantec will get a feel for what's there, but actually doing the borings will tell us, is it asphalt, is it gravel, etc. And we've been looking at the streets, and interesting enough, maybe you all already know this, but 40% of our streets were built in the 50s or earlier, which in the 50s, we didn't have the standards we have today. 83% of our streets were built before 2000. So, we're probably going to find a lot of those streets that don't have any treated subgrade or thick enough base asphalt. So I think that's really going to tell us some information.
So how are we going to get this information out, and will we get it out in time for any voter to have knowledge of what our plan is, area plan, a distance, length of improvement, anything like that? Is that even possible to get that out before the election time?
We have a schedule that Stantec gave, and if everything goes perfectly well, we might have it right before the election. So really, we're trying to say this is really a community program for our streets. You know, if we, this is how we're going to approach our streets in the future. And even with the bond now, but continuing in the future so that we, you know, fix it right now so we don't have to go back in the future. You know, we'll still have to maintain. So we're trying to sell, you know, I think it's going to be a process exactly how we're doing, exactly what we're going to do, and then hopefully we get a little more data in. So we're really trying to meet that schedule that's really tight. Depends on weather and some things like that.
And hopefully we do if it's put out there. But I know I've been told before, sitting here, that we believe the interest may be lower now than it may be next year. We don't know, I don't think. We could assume that's to be the case. Nothing usually goes down. It's still a little bit difficult for me, though, to ask the voters to approve something that we believe we can do, but we're not sure what that's going to be. And we know it's going to be some of the streets. We don't know which streets. And again, what we're going to do to those streets, that's just really super difficult for me. It just seems like we're going in a little premature without the information necessary. And in that, sure, I could take and well, I believe we're going to do right by this, and I truly do. By the same token, I think with full amount of information, I think the voters would have a fair shake at deciding what they really want to do. Without that information, I just don't see how it would be, how they could make a fair decision.
Okay, Sheila, you want to say something?
What we do know is that the proceeds from this bond issue would only be used for the streets and roads of the city. And what we also know is that we would be using that money to make improvements to the worst streets in the city. And what we also know is that we will have good, accurate information to know exactly what the worst streets in the city and which streets need to be most improved before we issue these bonds.
Well, it seems like a good plan from our part. Once we know all that, I just feel like that the voters not having that information is really not a plus. But another subject here that at least I feel that there should have been two separate bills, one for the roads, one for the storm, so that at least myself, I'd feel like I could vote for the one I wanted to vote for. Because I don't think lack of information does me any favors here. So why was this put on one bill with two separate items, really, instead of two bills? Why would that be the case?
That's just how we did it. We didn't have any reason to be more efficient.
Thank you, and thanks for the time, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilman McPherson.
One question, I think, and I had the question myself and asked and got some explanation, but maybe it would be good if our people, if our community know why, as Councilman Savage said, it seems like we're kind of in a rush to get this squeezed in right now and get that put on. Could we just get the explanation as to why we are kind of getting this in and what the problem would be if we delayed on that?
Absolutely. Yes, ideally we would have more information. The reason that we're doing this now is because interest rates are in a rising environment, and the next opportunity will be a year from April. And so we feel like to taxpayers might not want to risk the fact that interest rates will rise to such an extent that it will significantly reduce project funds available to go towards these projects. And that's why we're deciding to go now, because our next opportunity wouldn't be for an entire year until an entire year later. And interest rates have been increasing a lot quickly over the last year. For a long time they stayed low, and now they're increasing, and so we're kind of trying to race against to make the market favorable so that citizens can get a bigger bang for their buck.
Okay, what was it 2 years ago, the rate?
Gosh, it was about 2%.
Oh, we've already done the numbers, but tell me what that meant in the bottom, and what is it now?
4%.
So what's that mean? What were the numbers we did in my office? What was the numbers? What's the difference?
It's I don't know the exact, I can't remember the exact number. It was
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes. And we did a lot of refunding also. We refunded old debt, so we took advantage of the low rates and did a lot of refunding to be able to allow us to pay off some of the GO bond debt that had been issued before at a faster rate, and to reduce our interest costs to make it possible so that we could do this no tax increase bond issue.
Councilman Finn was next.
Yeah, Celia, I felt like we had a conversation about, you know, what kind of mileage could we get by doing this. Am I correct in that? It's been probably a month ago, I guess, that we did, and we talked about a little bit of what it looked like if worst case scenario the road had to be completely tore down, base redone, what it would look like. And it seemed to me like we were right around the 5 miles of road if it was like the worst case scenario, and then the best case scenario was like right around 15 miles of road. Am I off here? Where are we at there on that?
You're pretty spot on. Now, to say worst case, you know, we could get out there. So what we assumed is if we had to replace at least 8 inches of asphalt and then do a mill and overlay, so 8 plus 2,
Right.
we could get in about 5 miles of street.
Right.
Now we could have to go in, you know, because we have a lot of springs, we may have to go in and do treated subgrade. So I didn't factor that in. You know,
Okay.
that's going to be something we're going to find.
We don't have any
So-
springs in the city, do we?
Yes, all over.
Right. Right.
And so, so then I looked at an option where, okay, half of the streets will do that full depth replacement at 8 inches, and half the streets will just do a mill and overlay. We could get in about 16 miles.
Okay.
Now, looking at the age of the streets, that's probably not what we're going to get
We're not gonna get
but
to
I
16.
kind of wanted to just show you, you know, the difference of how much it costs to do the full depth versus just a mill and overlay.
So we're probably going to land somewhere right around the 10-mile range.
And it also depends, you know, I like my caveats, because it really depends on the priorities. I think our arterials are in really good shape, but if we have to do an arterial that has a 10-inch and a 2-inch requirement versus local, so it kind of depends on that. It really depends on the subgrade and what's out there.
A lot of variables here.
Do we want to, spend a little bit of money on preventative maintenance to keep our good streets good? And those are all decisions that, of course, the council will make, but those are some different options. So I wanted to give those caveats, but that's kind of what I based on my numbers on.
Right. And refresh my memory again. How many miles of road do we have in our city?
130 miles, so 265
260 lane
miles.
miles.
Yeah,
Correct.
lane miles.
So we're gonna scratch the surface on this thing here. Not all the roads need to be repaired or replaced. However, there's a lot in front of us to be done.
And what I look at is we don't know what's out there. Once we know what's out there and we know, you know, the cost, then we can at least know what we're dealing with and try to make a plan to make improvements as we go. And so right now, we don't really know that.
And so we could spend, is it $83,000 we're gonna spend with this Scantech to go out there?
Yes, not including the borings. but
Right,
yes.
right. So they're going to go out there. So this is money well spent to give us an opportunity for a future plan to upgrade our roads and protect those roads and then replace as needed, correct?
Correct, and then we'll have that database set up, so next time it's not gonna cost all that money.
Correct,
So,
we'll have the data already.
yeah, so we'll be prepared to update the information.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councilman Lathrop, you were next.
Oh, just, we're voting on both of these on the same time, except the ballot language, each one of them is separate. The
Different
voters can
propositions.
vote on one or the other, or both, or not for both, you know, so we do have separate ballots.
Yes.
Okay, good point. Yes, sir, Councilman Savage.
Yeah, I was familiar that there's gonna be separate ballots, but, I still feel like it should have come, I feel like it should have been on two separate bills. I don't think it has anything to do with the ballots. The ballots obviously is two different, I understand that, but it's put before me to have to vote all or none. So, also I wanna say too that I don't disagree with really any of this in respect to the need. We've known the need for quite some time. What I don't understand is, since we have known the need, it was decided to be brought up and go for this thing at such short notice that, you know, it's really not, it's just really not well planned. We've known we need roads. The stormwater, we do have an idea where we're going with that. That's a huge difference. That's why that I could absolutely see this being separated and have more power behind it, the two pieces. So anyway, nothing new of what we needed.
Councilman Tressel.
In regards to the stormwater, part of the problem with the road was we were using individual people to make assessments on the road, and that's where the personal evaluation came into play that wasn't very impartial, I guess is what I want to say. And this is fairly new technology. Well, in fact, you and I talked about it 6 or 8 months ago about, you know, having a company that I saw in the paper that do the evaluation, which they were doing over in Kansas, to make an independent evaluation of the road conditions. And so this is fairly new even for us to have something where the human factor is out and computers take care of the evaluation. So we have a truly independent evaluation as opposed to a personal one. So again, I can look at it and say it's great, and you look at it and say, no, it's not worth a darn.
Well, and Councilman Savage has alluded to several times that in our area, the grade, the soil are just really tricky too.
Oh, yeah.
You can go in with great intentions and get discoveries that you didn't anticipate. And I anticipate that you won't get what you're looking for all the time. I want Sheila, tell me about the percent. Did you get that figured out?
Yes, so a half of a percent increase in the interest rate would reduce the principal, so the project fund by $1.5 million.
And I don't know if you all follow the market. I think most of us do in here. What are the chances that it's going to go up, the interest rates? 100%. It's just going to happen. And I will say this too. I don't care if you don't think it's ready, we'll vote no, but there's a good chance we won't be doing any improvements next year if the rates are outlandish. We just can't do it. So do it whatever way you think is fair. Vote your conscience and what's best for your constituents. And I think there's some things, and I think I wish we could have worked on it. I talked about that before. I wish we could have done it. We were kind of caught in a log jam. Of course, the market is dictating a lot of this. I think it's dictating all of it for the speed. But again, any other comments or questions?
I have one, just on your, didn't you say earlier it was 2% and it now went to 4%?
That was the market rates about a year and a half ago or so and now right now they're just under 4%, just under 4%.
Well.
And then So Todd Goffey is the city's financial advisor, and he did all kinds of scenarios for me. And I went back to a previous email to look, and he said that we would, like, if we went up to 4.5%, by the time we issued bonds, we would lose out on $1.5 million. So we would not be able to keep that promise to the voters of the 20-cent levy, so we would have to reduce, and we will reduce the amount that we took out to make sure that we did not increase the levy more than 20 cents.
Yeah, so what I was worried about is a 0.5% was 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm. A 0.5% rate increase.
I was thinking that when you went from 2 to 4, I thought, well, if we went up 2%, that's going to be a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yes, if we went up 2%, we would be decreasing our proceeds.
Be about 6 million.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
And
I just wanted to clarify that.
And again, none of us know how quickly rates are going to go up or by what amount, and that's kind of the risk that we are. If you chose, council wouldn't be choosing to issue the bonds; they would be choosing to ask the citizens if they wanted to take that risk or not. That's what you guys are deciding tonight.
Thank you.
Any other
Mayor,
questions? Sir.
I wanted to make that clear so there's an understanding. I know that we're only voting to decide whether to let the voters have a look at this thing or not. That's understandable. I support the roads. I support the storm sewer. What I'm lacking here is being able to give the voters the information that they need to make a fair decision. That's my holdup here. So I just want to make that very
Oh, I
clear.
understand completely, and I think that's a valid point. And I
Okay.
can't argue
All
with
right.
that at all. I think you're
Well,
absolutely
and
spot
I
on.
want it clear, though, that it's not a matter of me voting for these roads or not for these roads. I totally understand this, to put it out to the vote of the people, but I really want to give them something that they will come back and recognize the value. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Davidson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak.
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop.
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel.
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Councilman Savage.
Nay.
Councilman McPherson.
Aye.
Councilman Finn.
Aye.
That motion passes. Oh, wow. Resolutions. Do we have any resolutions this evening?
No.
Liaison reports. Councilwoman Davidson, you have one for Park?
I do, it's short. Looking for a fun way to kick off the new year? Here's a great way to explore your artistic side and have fun with friends. Join us for Canvas and Cocktails on Wednesday, January 23rd, that's next Wednesday, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. at Memorial Station for a paint party. Cost is $25. Paint brushes, easels, canvas, snacks, and instructions are provided. We'll leave the fun to you, and wine will be available for $5 a glass. You can register at 348-7400 or stop by the front counter. Space is limited. The next and final is don't miss out on playing one of our premier recreation leagues this spring. Sign-ups are now underway for all youth programs, and early bird fees are available for a limited time. You can join this Saturday, which was last Saturday, January 12th, but you can also sign up online at www.teamsideline.com/Belton. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for Park? Okay. How bad was the, does anybody know how bad the park got hit by the storm? I went and drove through it, and it didn't look too bad. They had something that looks like they cleaned it up pretty quick. Okay. Anything for tree or public works? Okay. Pardon me?
Simmer down.
Okay. Oh, wow. Mayor's communications, I'm going to leave this up to the acting city manager this evening because we're talking about, I should allude to the storm and the effect that it's had on our constituents, and it's been dramatic for everybody. People without power, I will say that I'm proud of the road people. Our roads are just spectacular compared to a lot of other people's. I know that our first responders have been very busy helping people out. KCP&L's probably doesn't like me very much, but you got to know that it's tough. It's really tough, and that we all felt. And I think you're going to allude to some of the things that we have in store, like what we're going to do with debris and those kinds of things. So I'll give in to acting manager this evening.
Celia is going to tell us about the drop-off location and the times.
Okay. This is on our website, and what we're planning is to have a drop-off site at Markey Park, so not the business park, but the ball fields, for storm debris and tree limbs. Now, we've set some preliminary times. We wanted to offer some early times in case anyone's gung-ho out there and doing it, but we're not really sure how many are going to come. But right now, we're looking at Thursday from 10 to noon, and then Friday from 10 to noon, and then Saturday 8 to 3. Now, if the weather hits like it's going to, we're going to cancel that, and that's part of the information on the website. And then next week, the Thursday and Friday 10 to noon, and then the Saturday the 26th and Saturday February 2nd from 8 to 3. Now, we're just trying to gauge entrance now. If there's a lot of people that want to come during the day, we'll expand those hours, but that's what we're shooting for now. We're going to ask for proof of Belton residency, either a driver's license or a water bill. No trash or general yard waste. Maximum length of limbs is 4 feet and the diameter is 6 inches. And we're going to have a chipper shredder out there to kind of, create some mulch, and then we're going to check with other departments if they need it. We talked about if we have an excess, we may consider, allowing residents to come get it. So we'll see how that goes.
What about the people that don't have the ability to get the debris to the park, Markey Park?
We have listed on both Facebook and the website some businesses that have tree trimming businesses that are licensed, which means that they have met all the requirements and have insurance. We actually called them to ask them for their permission to list their business name and phone number on our website, so people can call those businesses and hire them to do removal. Also, currently, there is no yard waste pickup at the curb. However, that does begin again March 1st. And I asked Siri last night, and it's 46 days away. So I don't know how long it's going to take before all that snow melts, but hopefully less than 46 days.
Is it realistic with people that are stretched to the limit already? They're going to be able to get their debris if they have a lot of tree limbs down. Are they going to be able to afford to be able to have that stuff? I mean, we can have volunteer groups work, and I think we've got lists of those that we can put out on Facebook. But it's not realistic probably with what I've seen driving the city every day. It's pretty disastrous and the expectations. Some of the trees are as round as I am. But, I mean, they're pretty big limbs. There's the whole trees that have fallen. And it costs a lot to get rid of a tree. And I don't know that that's really a good thing. So we need to think deeper on that probably, on what we're going to do to help.
I would encourage people to call the neighborhood watch groups. I think the neighborhood watch groups were putting together lists of volunteers. So if you need help, reach out to your neighborhood watch group. And I think that they have a list of people who earlier in the summer had said that they would be able to help.
Last time I used a chainsaw, almost cut off my little finger. Yeah, they laughed at me. I don't mind. I got to get a bigger saw to do some of these trees, though. What are you seeing, Chief? You do that kind of stuff sometimes, too.
We've been through similar storms that were much worse than this in the past. The city has provided the drop-off services and the disposal of the brush. However, we don't have the resources to actually go in and clear people's yards. If the debris is in the roadway, Our crews, our city crews have done that. We have manned the drop-off sites with city people to pull brush off of trailers, but we do not have the resources to actually clean people's yards and debris. So I believe, and while some folks may say that it's cold-hearted, I believe that we as a city are doing as much as we can as far as providing the free drop-off and disposal of the brush at this point. And when I say it was much worse before, those of you that were here will remember we had what is now the middle school. The old high school's parking lot was completely full. Markey Park was completely full, and Municipal Park was completely full of brush, and we spent months disposing of brush, as did every community in the Kansas City area.
You two are the leaders of emergency management. Is there anything that you guys can tell us about people that don't even, that have residents that need to spend, like for warming and all that kind of a situation, a warming center type deal?
In the Kansas City area, the only shelters were private organizations, community organizations such as the Red Cross that opened actual shelters. There was a shelter at 104th and Hillcrest. In all of Kansas City, that shelter at a maximum saw 30 people in their shelter. Most people choose in these type of circumstances to remain at home or remain with friends and family. They still have shelter, and most of them don't want to leave their homes unless they are forced to. So we encourage people to use whatever resources they have to shelter in place, to seek out friends and family, and to take care of themselves that way. In extreme cases, if someone needs to warm, we have told them that they can use the lobbies of public buildings in order to warm up, but those are not long-term shelters.
We opened the fire station up, Station 2, Saturday night for a couple hours and had nobody interested in coming. They all did what the police chief said, went with friends and family, and they want to stay where they're at until if it gets real bad, then we're going to have to look at something, but
So if we get Snowmageddon again this weekend, is there going to be, we also have to be aware of the fact that if we get a 50-degree day tomorrow, 45, we could have floodwaters. We've got to be cognizant of that fact that,
it's going to be a lot cold. It's going to be a lot colder this weekend, so hopefully the snow is not as wet as it is and a lot drier, so hopefully.
Wow. You're on?
I think that staff, Public Works, and Public Safety and Emergency Management did a fantastic, phenomenal job this weekend. And so I thank all of you. I know you guys worked very hard, long hours, and we appreciate it.
Are you done with
one thing
Carolyn?
One thing I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, is I do think good decisions were made. I know that in these type of situations, everyone's got an emergency.
Okay.
And we have to triage those and respond accordingly. So we prioritize those emergencies, and there are some emergencies that are true emergencies, and there are others that are more inconvenience. And we work our way down through those as do all responders, whether it's public safety, emergency management, or public utilities. So,
Carolyn, do you have an update?
I do. So I would like to let City Council know that we have received a final development plan for an Avid Hotel. It is a IHG brand, and they have submitted a plan to go directly across the street from the Fairfield Inn on Mullen Road behind Home Depot. It's a 4-story hotel. I believe it's about 90 rooms.
What was the name of that?
Avid. It's a new It's a new brand that they're trying.
AVID.
Yes. Yeah, it's an IHG brand, yes.
You had another question, Councilman?
I had one. Is all the power back on in Belton?
No.
No?
No.
No.
Please know that the ones that are left are individual ones. And so it's taking KCP&L linemen a long time because they are having to go and when they're restoring power, it's for one residence. It doesn't take the whole neighborhood. And that is the delay. But they're not resting. They are working around the clock and are working as hard as they can to restore power to all of their customers.
And a lot of the single individual power and light won't hook back up because of the damage that was done to the meters, the mast and everything.
Yeah,
Some of them will be out of work, out of service until the homeowner fixes.
Yeah.
But there are issues when they're fixing that they're blowing transformers, so it's causing other outages.
Yeah.
Not storm related, but what they're doing. You know, I've been keeping an eye on the maps since Friday, and I just saw one a little bit ago that created up 56 people are out. And it hasn't been on there since Friday, so they've done something, so. But their numbers dwindling down. They got 2,000 linemen in the metro area, and there's people here from St. Louis and Illinois in Belton right now working, so they're doing as best they can. They got a method they do. There's no change in that method. I've been messing with power and light for 20 years, and they do what they do. Nobody changes what they do, so.
I was more worried about the main lines, you know, if we had a whole neighborhood out.
No, there's just pockets.
Yeah,
So
okay, thank you.
I think they got all the big neighborhoods up, but there's just pockets, so.
What do you got left?
Just the meeting schedule for January and February 2019 meetings is listed here. There's a work session that begins at 6:00 p.m. next Tuesday night, and a regular meeting following directly after that, and on February 12th and February 26th. Additionally, the proposed budget is ready to, I have copies. After we adjourn, I will hand those out to you guys to take home. Alexa's letter, she's been ill, and so she didn't get a chance to sign it, but I did print a copy of that, and I will send a copy of that home with you. And also, we have a schedule of how we're going to cover the budget at each work session so that you guys can be prepared. We are not going to go line by line this year. What we're going to do is give you an overview, and then we want you to ask questions and to give you guys the information that you want and that you are asking for when we go over this year's budget. We did this when we were preparing for the sales tax election. We went to all the different departments and we let employees and the community ask questions that they cared about. And it was so helpful because nobody tuned me out because you guys got bored with what I was saying. You got to learn what you wanted to know about. And we're going to try that this year, and I think that you guys are going to really like it. I think you're going to feel like you know a lot more about the city's budget and finances that way. And so, you know, we have a topic that we'll go over so that you can and we will do an overview and then allow you guys to ask questions. I will have all the information. This way I can show you where the answer's coming from and why I'm answering in such a way. If you ask a question ahead of time, then I will absolutely have the information to be able to show you where the answer's coming from and why I'm answering that way. And if not, that's okay. If I don't have it that night, I'll have it at the next meeting. And so, I think it's a much more efficient and, less boring way for you guys to get your questions answered. So,
Is that it?
yes.
Other business? Anybody, other business, Councilman?
I have one. Is anybody going to the MML Westgate meeting in Parkville, the 24th?
I think I'm planning on going, but I got to get with you. I got to ask my wife. I think I told her. I thought Alexa was going too. She didn't tell you I was going? That was a joke. Okay. Yeah, I got to ask my wife again, but remind me tomorrow. But I'm planning on going up there. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor?
Sir?
I just want to let everybody know that last weekend they had a big Special Olympics basketball tournament that they have every year here in Belton, and it was a success. January the 26th at Longview Lake will be the Kansas City area polar plunge for Special Olympics. And if any of you would like to join the mayor in getting in Longview Lake, I'm sure that he would appreciate the company.
Wow.
Yes. And then also on May the 5th, again this year, the Cass Community Health Foundation Walk for Health is scheduled for that Saturday, May the 4th. It begins at the hospital and goes down through the neighborhood and back, and we'll have more information for you all then. But if you'd like to form a team or be on a team, all of that's online also. So.
Is there a weight limit or anything like that? Or?
No.
And Belton Cares, when's there? I saw there's a meeting coming up for Belton Cares.
Should be Thursday at 3:30.
This Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. Any others? I'd entertain.
Move to adjourn.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.